Hey there, my name's Teresa, and I'm a grateful believer and an addict and alcoholic in recovery.
Hi, Teresa.
Hi, glad to see you all. Happy Wednesday. And yes, it's so nice to have it light and bright and somewhat sunny, and it's like spring is really gonna come. Yay! So to celebrate that, I thought I would talk about crisis. Why not? I thought I would talk about when times are tough, when times are hard, when we're going through crisis. Now, that's, I'm talking about this tonight, and I'll get into a little bit of testimony. So tonight I'm going to do a little bit of testimony of my own crisis. And but before I do that, I just want to talk a little bit about how we let ourselves acknowledge crisis. And a few times when I've talked, I've said something like, was it last time I talked about being discontent and like how do we know if we're content? Mm-hmm. So sometimes that's kind of the place to start. How do we know if we're experiencing crisis? So we tend to think that crisis is some big thing like, okay, somebody really dear to me died suddenly. Yes, crisis, that does go in that column there. But crisis really is an internal experience. Crisis is how we are responding to a situation that really makes us so emotionally agitated and kind of confused, mentally confused, that we don't use our regular coping skills. And we don't use our regular tools that we have been used to using before this crisis occurred. So that could be, for me, that could be having to drive a rental car. I mean, like, I don't know what to do. But seriously, that doesn't have to be a trauma, an acute trauma. It could be a change, a significant change. It could be a new job. It could be the loss of a job. It could be the loss of a home environment. It could be a really difficulty coming into a relationship that had been pretty harmonious, and or the complete fracture of a relationship that we miss and we grieve and we mourn. But a lot of times that internal reaction, so we said that it's an internal reaction that is creating such emotional upset and mental confusion, those two things. So that could be moving. For some people, I remember I used to think crisis could even be positive. When I would get ready to go on vacation, a big vacation, like to travel somewhere, I'm looking at Ronnie, it's not about you, but I was not emotionally agitated in a negative way, but in a positive way, that's excitement. So I would spend more money. I would eat crazy foods. I would do a terrible job at my job, whatever it was, like the week before. Like, I'm going on vacation. I'm going out of the country. I'm doing something fabulous. And it's a big change. And then sometimes traveling can be difficult. But I really think that sometimes we don't give ourselves permission to acknowledge, to investigate, to really sit down with God with intention and with prayer and say, what is going on with me? Why am I so emotionally agitated and mentally confused? Why does it seem hard to know what the next thing to do is? So another thing that creates crisis is a change in our schedule, a change in our routine. We are creatures of routine. And there's a part of our brain that starts relying on routine more than, or as much as, we're relying on the mercy and grace of Jesus, even if our routine is about our salvation. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've gotten agitated because I didn't do my particular reading at the right time, in the right place. That's my devotion. And now what's going to happen? It's going to be a terrible day, which is funny because I'm more reliant. I'm looking for my foundation more about that routine. The mercy and grace of Jesus didn't go anywhere. So that is all still accessible to me. But our brains really, really love routine. And changes in routine cause upset. And it's important that we acknowledge that upset. So that's what crisis is. It's when you are internally experiencing that upset. So look at what's going on around you that has changed your routine or changed your environment enough that it is contributing to this. So the testimony that I wanted to talk about was sometimes, like, I'm the same. I, A, love routine. B, don't really want to stop and acknowledge when I'm in crisis. And so most of you know that I started a business project 6 years ago, and I have loved it. And I got to hire a bunch of people and take care of old people in the community up in Vancouver. And then we got to, for the last 6 years, we got to work with elders and people who are really sick, who are houseless. And so we have a team of people that do that too. And I have to tell you, this has been the best work that I have ever done. And I don't have a sense that it's because I do it or because it's my business. It is just the best work. So for 6 years, my days were full of working with 8 people who worked in the office. We all worked in the office together, who are phenomenal people, and about 30 people who are out in the community providing care. And so every day I got to staff all of our work we were doing with these phenomenal people, or go out and spend time with people who were quite ill, who needed care, or go out to the camps about once a week and spend time with houseless folks. And I knew that this work was appointed by God. I knew that we were the hands and feet of Jesus in doing this work. And we had a lot of support, and we just had a lot of joy in this work. And about 2 years ago, things started getting financially difficult, and about a year ago, for this last year, it's been hard to make payroll. So in January, I knew that I had to close the business, that this couldn't go on any longer. And so about 4 weeks ago, I sat with those 8 people and had to tell them. And it wasn't a big shock because we'd all struggled this last year, and I had talked about it and been transparent about it, but it was shocking enough and very emotional. So over the last 4 weeks, all the stuff has happened that has to happen in closing a project like this. And it's still happening. We won't actually be done till probably the end of April, but it takes a while to pull back all that work and to close it down. So I literally have spent days waking up and looking at the ceiling going, oh, okay. And just staying there, like looking at the ceiling. And I'm kind of laughing about it because then eventually I say, okay, here's my list of things to do. And I know that God is present with me. I know that. I just feel bad. I feel terrible. I feel so sad. But for weeks, I would not say that. I would not acknowledge that. Well, it's a business. This is just what you do. And this is just what happens. And it's all good. But in doing this teaching, I'm doing it because I am letting myself acknowledge that I am in crisis. I lay there and stare at the ceiling because I am emotionally agitated and I am mentally confused about what to do next. And my days are often, in my days, I am emotionally agitated and mentally confused. I keep going around saying my brain is too full. So there's things to do. I make my task list. I use my Microsoft Office software and got my tasks that I tick off, and I do all the tasks I'm supposed to do. But at some point, I had to sit down and say, I am in crisis. I do not like this. And I need help. I need help from God, from my fellowship, from my friends, from my prayer groups. I need help. And so that's an example of something. My safety is not threatened. Nobody's taking anything from me. Last time I looked, my refrigerator was full. My heat was on. I have a roof over my head. I have clean drinking water right out of my tap. I have everything I need. And yet, it's okay. It's okay to have your needs met and to still be mourning or grieving. And it's okay to acknowledge that and to go through the process of what that means, whether that means a new path forward, and it does, once this is the hard part. So that's what God keeps telling me, this is the hard part. And indeed, transition is hard. So when you're looking at your own life and you're looking at, I'm just moving. It's not that big of a deal. I don't know why I'm so upset. I'd rather walk on really sharp tacks barefoot than move. So moving's hard, or it's just, we say that to ourselves a lot, especially I think those of us who have come through a really hard time of a lot of trauma. And here we are in recovery now, and here we are believers. We're supposed to be shiny and happy all the time because Jesus is with us and is our Savior, and that part is true. But Jesus himself said on the Sermon on the Mount, blessed are those who mourn. So he in that sermon, that was a huge sermon that tells us about the heart of our Savior and who it is that he cares about and that he has special love for and that we should have special love for. And, he lists these people. And so that's a category. That means that is a category that is common and is important. When our hearts mourn, that's important to Jesus. So it should be important to us to let ourselves mourn. And the second part of that is for they shall be comforted. And so that's the next part of crisis, is how we get to the comforted part. And it's not a linear process. It's not like, oh, I'm in crisis on Wednesday morning, and so I'm going to go through these steps, and then I'm going to be comforted, and it's going to be gone. This is very much like anything else in life, like hunger or breathing. We got to keep doing it. we got to keep acknowledging. We got to keep praying. We got to keep accepting comfort. We got to keep comforting ourselves and spending lots of time sitting with God in contemplative prayer and hearing his comfort to us. So I did a little blurb from a teaching that Rick Warren did, which sometimes I find him very rigid and not my style you know my style. I get a little silly. He is not silly. But he had some really good stuff to say. And that was, when he's talking about crisis, to acknowledge our grief and however that's coming up for us. If it's depression, if it's anxiety, if it's sadness, if we have a big change that we're contemplating, even if we chose the change, vacation. But, better examples are moving or job change or things where our groove just got ungrooved, grooved. Anyway, so where our brain is looking for something new, that's a time when we can have mental confusion and where we have to acknowledge that it's going to be a difficult time. Pause, pray, breathe, and look for God's comfort. So the second thing that he says about this is to accept help. And we do tend to tell ourselves a lot, it's just X, Y, or Z. It's just whatever. It can't be that big of a deal. But that is not the way we have to talk to ourselves. That may be how we were talked to as a child. That may be how we have thought about our own difficulties for a long time. So just take the just word out. So when we're describing the difficulty that we're having, when we start realizing that we're having this anxiety and fear and depression and tearfulness and a hard time finding a new path, take the just word out. I have moved. I have a new job with all new responsibilities. I have lost a relationship. I miss that person. We don't say just anymore. We give it the weight that it has. And once again, Jesus tells us, blessed are those who mourn. He doesn't say, you're just mourning. Blessed are the just mourning people. They'll be comforted. He doesn't say that. He gives it the weight. So accept help. Even though you may not want to, you have to avoid isolation. We have to avoid isolation. We have to look for fellowship. And the other thing about reaching out is it takes that burden, just like with anything, like with confession. Talking about crisis is not necessarily confession, but it can be, because we can engage in some really obnoxious behaviors. I do when I'm in crisis. I engage in negative thinking and bad habits, and I am prone to isolation. So reaching out is a time that we share that. We share what's going on. And I don't know if there's anybody in this room who can right now, without picking your phone up, tell me if you have a speck of the last snack you ate on your face. For sure. For positive. Probably not, because, or something in your hair, or a fuzzy.
What did you say?
A speck of the last snack that you ate on your face or in your hair. My point is that we can't see ourselves. We have to turn to the person next to us and say, do I have anything in my hair? We have to turn to the person that we trust, that we know loves us, and that is looking for our best intentions, and say, tell me what you're seeing. Tell me, give me your feedback, and pray with me, pray for me. And this is the way that we can highlight some of the areas that we're not as aware of. I come to fellowship, and even if you don't want to talk, I hear about other people how they get through crisis. And it's a way that we can get another view of ourselves. We cannot see all the pieces of our behavior, our attitude. My adult children are really good at telling me about my behavior, my attitude. You're really stressed lately, Mom. So, that is, I don't take that as criticism. That is really good feedback to have, because that is my opportunity when I go out of my way to spend time with them, especially in difficult times like I'm having now. And I go out of my way to spend time with them, with my fellowship, with my friends from Bible study, with all kinds of friends, in order to have that feedback. And I don't usually say, is there anything in my hair, but it is the only way that we get out of the echo chamber in our head, is if we make that effort. And I would recommend, like doubling your time. If you feel like you're in crisis, our inclination is to say, oh, I don't want to go to a meeting. I don't want to do that. I'm going to skip this. Let's cross that off. I have to think. I need to think. That's the last thing you probably need to do. And what you could do is go to a meeting and then ask about, would there be another meeting that might be good for me that I haven't tried? Would you go with me? Could we go together? Can we have coffee? So expanding your fellowship during any time that you feel like you're in crisis. Number 3 that he talked about was choose how to react. And we do that prayerfully. We do that with God's help. We choose whether to react with a stance of self-pity and bitterness or resentment, or a stance of joy. And joy is not happiness. Happiness is fleeting and temporary. Joy is an underlying strength that God gives us. And we choose whether to accept that, even during times of crisis. And it's a hard sell when you're going through a really hard thing. But the Bible talks in many places about no matter the circumstances, we can consider it all joy. And that doesn't mean happiness or I like it. It means the joy that there's a bigger outcome to this story than what I'm seeing right this minute. So we can choose that, or we can choose the other. It doesn't mean that we're not still going to be depressed or anxious or emotional. We can have both. We can say, I know, God, I trust you that there is going to be a better outcome. There's a bigger story here. Right now, it's hard. And God will comfort us as we mourn. So I talked months ago about change your lens if you can. Try to change the lens. So even if it's hard and you're really having a hard time, you can change the lens on what you have. Like when I close my business, I do keep looking at, I will spend a lot of time with my grandchildren. I will find other ways to be active in the community. My people all 8 people that I've worked with that are so phenomenal have found better jobs and are on to amazing opportunities. So I can change that lens. I don't always want to. I have to go through these steps every day, sometimes more than one time a day. And we can grieve and receive comfort at the same time. We can grieve and mourn because that's an emotion, that's an emotional state, and receive comfort and have gratitude at the same time. These things are not mutually exclusive. So, number 4 that he recommends is to clarify your values. Whatever crisis that you're going through, you can usually it's a loss. We lost something. We lost whether it's our routine or our schedule or It can be something that seems like it's kind of small in our daily routine, or something big. If we're really working on it, it's probably something kind of bigger. So often it represents a loss and the helplessness around that loss. Like I lost my job, or I lost my housing, or I lost an opportunity, or I lost a person. So it's a loss that we are grieving, and that is all completely fair. And at the same time, we can clarify our values. So when I look at losing this over here, the business and the fellowship and the people and the work and the good feeling that I got from all of that, I have to clarify my values. My values are that, salvation first, that I know that that's what I value the most, and that I still have that. I didn't lose that. I didn't lose safety. I didn't lose safety and peace in God's mercy and grace that are still available to me every day. And I value that. So the things that I really value, I haven't lost. And it doesn't mean that I don't still mourn what I did lose. Those two things can coexist. So you get to say, okay, wait, I value my family, I value my kids are healthy, I have all these things, so I can clarify that those still are my values, and I can still be sad about this over here. But it provides a strength, provides a pivoting point where when we feel bad, we can be reminded to go right back to, okay, but the things, the core value, the foundation, which is our salvation in Jesus, to our recovery, and to our life of getting closer to God, still is there. So, and the last thing that he said to pay attention to is to acknowledge that we rely only on Christ. Only on Christ for stability. So over here, we're afraid, and there's helplessness, and there's instability in whatever's going on here, but really, we rely only on Christ for stability, true stability. So once again, it brings us back to our foundation. And as I have kind of puzzled through this the last few weeks in prayer and contemplation, I realized that I thought I was getting my identity, my stability, who I am, through, work in the community, being the person who takes care of the elders, being a good boss, being a good employer, being a good care provider in the community. And that is tempting. It's tempting because it really fills up that ego. It's tempting to really grab a hold of that as, well, that's it, that's everything. Well, that's really nothing as far as my true stability. So we rely on Christ for direction. So when we go through crisis, we're like, well, what's next? What am I going to do next? What's going to happen? God will make the way. It'll be right in front of me. I have to rely on Jesus for that direction. And of course, for salvation. So a couple of verses, Philippians 4:11. I have learned the secret of being happy at any time, in anything that happens, everything that happens. I can do all things through Christ because he gives me strength. And then this one I really liked. This is TLB version. Is that the Living Bible? TLB version of the Bible.
Living
I just
Bible,
like the
it must
wording.
be, yeah.
I think it's the Living
Living
Bible.
Bible, yeah.
So 2 Corinthians 1:9-10 says, we were really crushed and overwhelmed and feared we would never live through it. We saw how powerless we were to help ourselves, but that was good, for then we put everything into the hands of God, who alone could save us. And he did help us and save us, and we expect him to do it again and again. I love that verse. If I wasn't afraid of tattoos, and that would be a long tattoo, I would get it tattooed. But it's very inspiring, and it is the summary of how we can manage when we feel crushed and overwhelmed. And I think, late, sorry.
That's all right. Thanks, Teresa.